Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here, today to talk once again about what is, in my opinion, perhaps the most underrated games console released over the last 30 years. This system, of course, is none other than the Sega Saturn, a platform which provides a level of quality that seems to remain fairly underrepresented today, despite the fact that we now all have the World Wide Web at our fingertips. Surfing the information superhighway for tidbits of information on this device could not be easier, but many people seem to overlook this platform altogether, simply due to its lack of success in the Western world upon its release. In most countries, the Sega Saturn was vastly outsold by both the Sony PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, so therefore less people are likely to reminisce about their fond memories of this system as a result. On top of this as well, less than 300 of the Saturn's titles were released across Western territories, and many of these titles were locked down specifically to North America or the PAL regions, meaning that choices back in the day were limited for consumers. All of this in turn makes the Western versions of the Sega Saturn's libraries overall very pricey to collect for. In spite of this information though, once upon a time it was nowhere near as pricey to buy games for, so thankfully I managed to buy most of the expensive titles before the retro gaming craze really took off. So I have a lot of experience with this amazing device on the Western side of things. To give you a snapshot of how things are at the moment with this system, if you want to play one of the greatest JRPGs of all time in English on the device, Panzer Dragoon Saga, you are looking at paying between £250 to £400 for the pleasure. And sadly, none of these expenses would be going towards the game's developer or publisher. The large sum of money would be going straight into the hands of a reseller, in turn taking a large chunk of cash away from the development of new titles, and as a result hurting the gaming industry. The insane resale value of retro games is currently doing more damage to the modern gaming industry than piracy or emulation ever would. But thankfully, there are now more and more methods becoming available which will allow us to say no to the speculators and in turn allow us to experience these ancient relics of the past for cheap, whilst giving us the ability to direct all of our hard-earned cash directly into the hands of modern game developers instead, keeping the industry alive and healthy as a result. The sales of these amazing old games is becoming more and more common by the day, partially by a mutually beneficial myth which is perpetuated by both sellers and collectors alike. The phrase which is often thrown around is that the best way to experience these games is by playing the original software on the original hardware. Whilst this statement was certainly true in the past, these days are now officially over, as emulation and other methods of playing these games is increasing in quality day by day. For example, digital storage of ROMs is more practical than owning a physical collection. HDMI on modern devices offers a clearer picture than that of the output of original hardware, and most importantly, you do not need to give an outrageous sum of money to someone who played zero part in the game's development and publication in order to experience the title. Everything about these alternative methods just makes more sense, especially when it comes to games that remained exclusive to Japan. Whilst less than 300 titles were released on the Saturn in the West, well over 1,000 games made an appearance on the system over in Japan, which means there is an entire sea of high quality games which were never ever sold in the Western market to begin with. Sega never even made an attempt to profit off this software in the West, so why should we let greedy middlemen importers have our cash, let alone pay the outrageous import tariffs that go alongside shipping this software? In the past, to pull off this sort of naughtiness, you would often have to modify the internals of your beloved games consoles. However, Pseudo Saturn, on the other hand, offers a much more user-friendly solution that does not require the soldering skills of a technical wizard. Pseudo Saturn can be loaded directly onto a Sega Saturn Action Replay cartridge, Or if you really lack computing technical skills like myself, you can simply pop over to Etsy or eBay and purchase a cheap action replay with the software already preloaded to the device. As soon as you have one of these cartridges, you can pop it into the top of the system and the expensive global world of Sega Saturn will finally be available at your fingertips for the first time ever. If, like myself, you already own hundreds of expensive Sega Saturn games, this device is great as you can back up your existing games and play them off cheap CDRs. For example, rather than playing with a £300 4-disc set of Panzer Dragoon Saga software, I can get an identical experience by playing the game off 80p worth of Maxell CDRs instead. The backing up of this software is extremely simple too, and takes less than 5 minutes to recreate each disc. I simply downloaded the easy to use ImageBurn software along with a backup file of Panzer Dragoon Saga, opened ImageBurn, clicked on the right file image to disk, clicked on the Panzer Dragoon Q file in the source folder, then simply burned at 16 times write speed. Then hey presto, I have a disc which would not cause hundreds of pounds of damage from a simple scratch. Once you have the action replay equipped with the exploit, there are so many Japanese exclusives out there which are worth a play, which I intend to cover on this channel in the next month or two, when I create a video on the top 50 Japanese exclusive Sega Saturn games. But to tide you all over, I will name just a few to whet your appetite. One major title that, despite never making it out of Japan, has garnered a great deal of Western interest. This game is of course Radiant Silver Gun, but away from this there are also a large number of other Japanese space shooters that highly deserve your time as well. We have Dodonpachi, Battle Garegga, Blast Wind, Hyperduel and Guardian Force, just to name a few of these Eastern classics. These once suffered from region lockdowns, but I'll be able to cover all of these titles with a level of depth on this channel very soon. For me, as a European, this exploit also allowed me the possibility to be able to play huge RPGs such as Albert's Odyssey and Magic Knight Rayearth for the first time ever, as previously both of these high-end expensive titles only saw English language releases over in North America. There are also unique quirky platformers for the system, such as Silhouette Mirage and even the system's own version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which allows you to play the game as a girl. The only limitation to the pseudo Saturn exploit is obviously the fact that you cannot access the Sega Saturn games that require extra RAM cartridges to be played with, such as X-Men vs Street Fighter, Vampire Savior and Street Fighter 03. Just to name a few. This is as close to an Achilles heel as this device seems to really have. Perhaps my favourite feature of the pseudo Saturn at all though is that the exploit allows you to play many text heavy games which were previously completely inaccessible to Western audiences altogether, as the pseudo Saturn lets you play Japanese games which have been burned to CDR with the addition of never commercially released English fan translation patches. These are obviously games which were not really playable, even if you were part of the Sega Saturn import scene back in the day. Titles such as Shining Force 3, Scenario 2 and 3, Dragon Force 2, and Policenauts are all out there available to play in English, using the magic of the pseudo Saturn. If you want to be extra lavish, like myself, you can even log on to Etsy.com and buy these titles for as little as £5 each, complete with both printed box art and disc art, to bring you as close as possible to adding these games to your Western physical collection, if you are into that sort of thing. For me personally though, I just went down this route as I was struggling to patch the games, and for the £20 fee for these titles was worth less than my time tinkering regardless. My time is money. All in all, I would go as far to say as that the pseudo Saturn has been somewhat of a life-changing exploit, and has made me love and appreciate the Sega Saturn more than any time in history, and I have loved the system for a long time anyway. Pseudo Saturn truly does unlock the power of what the Sega Saturn should have been in the West all along. A great system with fantastic games in abundance, Games that have disappeared into the abyss over the last 25 years are finally back and available for everyone to experience using the original hardware. I could not recommend this product anymore. Let me know in the comment section if you too have had any experience with the Pseudo Saturn, and if this video triggers you to want to try it out. Further to this, if you are a Saturn connoisseur, I would absolutely love to hear your Japanese Sega Saturn game recommendations in the comment section. I may even talk about them in a future upload. Finally! My channel, Top Hat Gaming Man, is partly funded from the fantastic support and donations I receive from my Patreon supporters. So shoutouts in the credits to Carl Johnson, Shizuka Kobayashi, Greg Hooper, Sint Spaces, Kevin Verhaley, Andrew Bazansky, Edward O'Reilly, Tom Elliott, Mark S. Hines, Lawrence C, The Gaming Muso, SpongeMatt B, Quang DX, Stuart McDermott, JD Robbins, Michael Baker, Andy Aldridge, and all of my other patrons. You are making my dreams more realistic by the day.